Welcome to Passport Pals.
Hi everyone, it's Miss Mary Ellen at the Randolph Library. Welcome back to Passport Pals. Today we're going to be talking about Egypt. Do you know where Egypt is? If we get out our globe, give it a good spin, Egypt is here, the northern part of Africa. And you can see it's not right on the equator. It's north of the equator, but despite that, Egypt is still mostly desert. In fact, only about 7% of the land in Egypt is able to be inhabited by people, and about 95% of the people in Egypt live by the Nile River or in the Nile Delta. And we're going to be talking about the Nile a little bit later. So what are some other things that we need to know about Egypt? It's about the 14th largest country in the world in terms of population, and about the 31st largest in terms of its size. Now, when you think of Egypt, what do you think of? You probably think of pyramids, and you probably think about King Tut, mummies, things like that. Egypt was one of the leading countries in the world for 3,000 years until about 322 BC, when that area was conquered by Alexander the Great. But before that, Egypt ruled the world. And so today, we're going to have a lot of fun learning things about Egypt.
Here's our map of the continents again. You can see Africa is the yellow one. Here's a map that shows where Egypt is in Africa. You can see it's up in the northeastern corner. Here on this map, it's red. Can you still see Egypt on this map of the whole world? It's in northeast Africa. On this map, it's kind of a dark pink color. And if it helps, it's next to the green country Libya, which has a triangle point.
Today we're reading We Are Sailing Down the Nile, A Journey Through Egypt by Lori Krebs and Ann Wilson. Climb aboard the riverboat. We're sailing down the Nile. We'll visit Abu Simbel in just a little while. We see the temple just ahead. Jabari's in the lead. We stand before the statues, feeling very small indeed. Climb aboard the riverboat. We're sailing down the Nile. We'll shop at Aswan's market in just a little while. Kalila guides us to the souk. We buy some food to share. We'll picnic on the island with the others gathered there. Climb aboard the riverboat. We're sailing down the Nile. We'll reach the Valley of the Kings in just a little while. Our pharaohs once were buried here, says Abraham with pride. And Tutankhamun's tomb was found with treasures packed inside. Climb aboard the riverboat. We're sailing down the Nile. We'll be at the oasis in just a little while. Zahara greets the farmers who are harvesting their crops. They'll take their fruits and vegetables to sell in village shops. Climb aboard the riverboat. We're sailing down the Nile. We'll see the Cairo skyline in just a little while. Inside the vast museum halls, we see fantastic things. Mustafa spies the mummies of the crocodiles and kings. Climb aboard the riverboat. We're sailing down the Nile. We'll hike to Giza's pyramids in just a little while. Jamila knows these wondrous tombs, built centuries ago, still rise above the city, with the fabled Sphinx below. Climb down from the riverboat. We've sailed along the Nile and traveled across Egypt for just a little while. The day is nearly over, and the sun sets in the west. We'll dream about our journey and the places we loved best. That's We're Sailing Down the Nile. Okay, so we just read this book about sailing down the Nile, but it mentioned a lot of things that I thought it would be worth going into in a little bit more detail. So first of all, the Nile River is considered by many to be the longest river in the world. It's over 4,000 miles long. It begins in Lake Victoria, which is where Uganda and Kenya and Tanzania all meet. And then it flows north, which is kind of different. A lot of rivers flow south. There's no reason a river can't flow north. It flows north from Lake Victoria way down here, all the way up and drains into the Mediterranean Sea. And the reason it flows north, when you think about it, rivers flow from the highest area to the lowest area, runs downstream, just like any other water that you would pour anywhere else. And so it goes from the higher point up here down to a lower point. So we're just going to mention some of the things that they talk about passing as they're sailing down the Nile. First, they're talking about Abu Simbel. Abu Simbel is known because it has these wonderful monuments that were carved into the mountainside in about the 13th century BC. But then they had to be moved because in the mid-60s in Egypt, they put a dam across the Nile River called the Aswan Dam, and it created Lake Nasser. And because of that, they wanted the dam for a lot of reasons. First of all, it helps with controlling flooding, it helps water for agriculture, and it helps with hydroelectricity projects. So they wanted the dam, but they didn't want these very precious monuments to be ruined. So they cut them out of the rock where they were, and they replaced them high up in an artificial hill way back in 1968. Okay, so that's what they're talking about when they say that they stand before the statues. Okay, then they're talking about Aswan's market, which is a souk. A souk is just like, almost like if you've ever been to a farmer's market where there's lots of different stalls and things you can buy. And it says, we'll picnic on the island. This island is called Kitchener's Island. It's also now called El Nabatat Island. And it's very small, but it's all designed as like a botanical garden now. So there's all kinds of special plants there. And it's another place where people who live in that area can go and have picnics and have parks. So it's a nice little area there on the island. Okay, now they're talking about seeing the Valley of the Kings. In the Valley of the Kings, it says, our pharaohs once were buried here. For a period of about 500 years, the pharaohs who are the kings of Egypt and other very important nobles were buried in this area. And they were buried underground. And they were buried with a lot of treasure. And the reason they were buried underground is because they didn't want people to come and steal the treasure. And when we think of, the tombs that we think of, you're probably thinking of King Tut, unless you really know a lot more about Egypt. And that tomb was found in 1922 by a man named Howard Carter. And they took a lot of the things out of the tomb, and now some of them are in museums. Okay, so then they say we'll be at the oasis in just a little while. Do you know what an oasis is? An oasis is an area in the middle of a desert that is green and has water, and this oasis is called the El Fayum Oasis, and it's built because there's a little depression in the land, and a little channel comes out of the Nile and waters this little area. So it's a place where they grow fruits and vegetables for a lot, and then sell it to a lot of other places. Okay. Now they're going further north, and they'll see the Cairo skyline. Cairo is the largest city in Egypt. In fact, it's the largest city in Africa. It's the 6th largest city in the whole world. And in Cairo and the surrounding metropolitan area, about 20 million people live there. Okay, and now they're talking about Giza's pyramids. And this is another thing I think that a lot of people think about when they think about Egypt, which is these pyramids and the Sphinx. The Sphinx here in Egypt has the body of a lion and the head of a person. Okay, and these pyramids were built over 4,500 years ago. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit more, but I just wanted to show you some of these important things that were mentioned in the book, because the book went through it pretty quickly. Thanks. Okay, well, we just learned a lot of facts about Egypt, but now we're going to take our papers and just look at a few more things. Can you find Egypt here on the map? It's up here, this country way up here that's kind of a purplish color. Okay, it's right on the coast of the Mediterranean Sea. And here's a map that shows exactly where Egypt is. It may help you find it on the bigger map. Okay, and here's the flag of Egypt that we're going to color in, and it only takes 2 color crayons because it's red on the top and black on the bottom and white in the middle. That makes it easy, so we don't even have to worry about coloring in that eagle. Okay, and that eagle is called the Egyptian Eagle of Saladin, and it's an important, famous symbol of Egypt. So we're going to color it red here and black on the bottom. Okay. You could just cut the map from the back and paste it on if you want, but I think coloring it's just a little bit more fun. Okay, now for there you go. For the nature part and for the food, you can pick one to cut and paste on because I don't think they'll all fit. Okay, so this is a camel. Okay, this kind of camel with one hump is called a dromedary. And camels are really important in the desert. They're domesticated now, which means that they're tame, and people use them just like horses. Except the difference between a camel and a horse is that a camel can go for months without drinking water. And it can go for a really long time without food, too. And so that's why it is important in a desert area. Okay, this is an ibis. This bird, it's a wading bird. Okay, and the ibis is also important in the ancient Egyptian religion. This is a gazelle. You may have heard of gazelles. They run really fast. And one thing that makes a gazelle important in an area like Egypt is that they also don't require a lot of water, and they can get the water they need out of the food that they drink. Okay, so, and I made a mistake before. The camel can go for about a week without water, not months, but it can go months without food. So I'm going to cut out my camel here and paste him in for the nature, and you can choose whichever one you like. If you'd rather have the ibis or the gazelle, you can do that too. Okay. Now the foods that we have to represent Egypt, this is something called, I'm going to look at my notes here, full metamus, okay? And it's made out of crushed and stewed fava beans. Okay, and this one is called tamia. And you know what this looks like? You probably can't see when I'm holding it up, but if you're looking at the paper at home, it's similar to falafel, except where falafel is made with chickpeas, this is made with fava beans. Okay, and this is just a picture of a souk. I mentioned before a souk is like a market, and they have all different kind of spices and vegetables and fruits there. So you can pick whichever one of these you want to cut out. I think I'm going to cut out this one that is kind of like the fava bean falafel. And you can glue whichever one of these onto your sheet you'd like to do. Okay, and there we have it for Egypt. Okay, now here's something that's going to be fun. This is a crocodile, and there's definitely crocodiles in the Nile. Do you know the difference between an alligator and a crocodile? An alligator's snout is more of a U shape, and a crocodile is more of a narrowed V shape. Also, an alligator tends to be more dark, like black, whereas crocodiles can be different colors, like this fine green guy we have here. And the third way you can tell the difference is when an alligator closes its mouth, you usually just see its top teeth. But when a crocodile closes its mouth, you can see the top and the bottom teeth. So let's get started. Okay, so here's our paper plate, and we're just going to cut it in half. I'm just going to kind of eyeball it and cut it in half. Okay, we're going to save the bottom half for the bottom part of our crocodile. And then on the top, I'm going to draw a little shape for his eyes. Here, I'll hold it up against there. And then a little bit for the snout. So I'm going to start about here, okay? And it probably would help if you drew it with a pencil first. Okay, so I drew a shape here with 2 bumps for eyes and then a snout. And I'm going to try to cut it out. It doesn't really matter if yours looks exactly like mine. Okay, now what do we need? Teeth, right? So I'm just going to make the teeth out of pieces of index card. And I'm just going to make big shapes like this. Okay. And cut them out. And use my glue stick to put them in. While you're doing that, if you remember, it helps to have the part with the pencil markings on the back, so you don't see that, but that's not really that important. Okay. I'm busy cutting out teeth at home. And they use these big teeth and their powerful jaws to eat all kinds of things. Okay, here's my last tooth. I have my glue stick. And I think the easiest way to do this is just a big strip of glue and stick a few teeth on. Remember, I'm trying to, if I have pencil mark, I'm trying to put that in the back so you don't see it. One for the top. Now one for the bottom. Okay, the teeth are going to go here. Now the next thing that our crocodile is going to need is eyes. And I found that on the sample one I did, I used the cardstock for the eyes, but it was kind of hard to glue on because this part might be a little bit curved. So you might just want to cut 2 circles out of regular paper, just because it's a little bit softer. Okay, so just cut out 2 circles, about the size of, maybe about the size of a penny or so. And these, of course, don't have to be perfectly round either. And I put a big black pupil in the middle. And I'm going to glue these with my glue stick on these bumpy parts, sticking to my clothes, okay, to the part that I made up here. Okay, now I have the top and I have the bottom. What I need to do next is put them together. Okay, and that's where this paper, it's called a paper fastener or a brad, you could call it, comes in. This might be a little tricky, so you might want to, it might actually help to make a little hole with the scissors first. Okay. If you're just little, you might have somebody help you with this part. So you definitely don't want to hurt yourself. Because some of these brads aren't really all that strong when you try to, the paper plate's stronger than this, so I'm going to just make a hole with my pencil. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to put the brad through the top part of my crocodile and the bottom part of my crocodile, and then open it up by pushing these 2 parts aside. And that holds it together like this. Okay, there's my crocodile. Okay, here's our last activity for today. One thing that they found in Egypt when Europeans were discovering things about Egypt, they found a lot of carvings in the stone that they knew that was some kind of writing, but they didn't know what it meant. And they called them hieroglyphics, but they couldn't read them. Until in 1799, they discovered something which they called the Rosetta Stone. It looks like this. So they found this stone, and the great thing about it was it had the same thing written in 3 different languages. Now let's say you saw something in Spanish, and you didn't know any Spanish. But then if you found an English-Spanish dictionary or something like this, you could look at it and say, casa means home, mesa means table. When you have a language that you know next to a language you don't know, you can figure out what it means. And so what we're going to do today is a fun little activity using hieroglyphics. This is called, the shape is called a cartouche. I mean, obviously the shape is an oval, you know that. But when they found something like this in the hieroglyphics, an oval shape with a bar with letters in the middle, they knew that that was a royal name. Okay? And this sheet that is in your packet are some symbols. Okay, this is not actually going to be writing real ancient Greek the way they ancient Egyptian the way they really wrote it back there, because a symbol could represent a word, a sound, a concept. So it's a little bit more complicated than what we're doing. But we're going to do something just for fun and trying to write our name in the cartouche using these symbols. Okay, so everybody's will be different. So let's just take a minute and do this, okay? My first name is Mary. I don't think I can put my whole name in here. And we're going to write them from top to bottom. Okay, so if you have a really long name, like Alexandria, or Elizabeth, or Sebastian, or something like that, you might want to just pick a nickname. Okay, so my first one looks like an owl. So I'm going to draw that. And I'm not the best artist in the world, but it's just about having a good time here. Okay, so here's my owl for M. My next one's going to be A. And on this sheet, it looks like it's supposed to be a vulture, but it's another bird. It's my day to be drawing birds. Okay. R is a lot easier to draw. And Y, there's two different ways to do Y. Okay, so you can draw your name and color it in however you like, okay? Well, that's it for today, and that's what we have about Egypt, but stick around and we'll see what country we're going to be visiting next month.